Are data caps bad? Well, it's clear that everyone would prefer not to have them, but do they really threaten net neutrality, or is there justification for them? Well, these questions have come up recently as companies including Netflix and Amazon have raised concerns about data caps, claiming they produce a competitive advantage for internet service providers. And these companies and numerous public interest groups have even called on policymakers to investigate the issues. But on the other side of the issue, there are some that believe they provide a necessary solution in this economy. Eli Dourado, who is a research fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, is among this group and is joining us now to explain why. Thanks for talking with us today, Eli.
Happy to be here.
Well, it appears that you are in the minority when it comes to data caps. So why, in your opinion, are they justifiable?
Well, I think there's at least three main economic reasons that ISPs or internet service providers like Comcast or whoever you get home internet service from would want to have data caps. And one of them is to be able to charge different prices to different kinds of users. So if consumer users can't afford as much for internet access, they might want to charge a lower price to ordinary consumers. And if businesses can afford to pay more, they might want to charge more to businesses. So a way to get the businesses to self-select into the more expensive plan is to have no data cap for business internet access and a data cap that would prevent businesses from using consumer internet for ordinary consumers. So the 250 gigabyte cap would make the internet service maybe unusable for some businesses, but would not tend to really harm very many consumers. So if you want the service without the cap, you can buy it from Comcast, from whoever your internet service provider is, and you just have to pay the business rate, which is higher.
Right.
So it's a way to get the businesses to self-select into the higher plan. Another reason is to help with congestion. So if too many people use the internet service, then it'll slow down for everybody.
Right.
So the alternative would be to have a metering plan. You pay by the bit for every download. You're paying a fraction of a penny. And then consumers would have to think really hard about, is this download worth it? Is it not? And by having a cap that most users don't hit, they solve that problem. And then the third reason that ISPs might want to have a cap is because they don't really want to get involved in copyright policing. Most internet users are casual file sharers, and they don't want their ISP telling them they can't do that. So having a 250 gigabyte cap prevents the really egregious file sharing from continuing without really getting Congress involved, without getting Hollywood lobbyists involved to make the ISPs have to do any sort of fine-grained policing of their networks.
Well, in terms of the copyright issue that you believe ISPs are seeking to avoid, are you saying that without data caps that a SOPA could actually happen?
There would definitely be a lot more demand for it, right?
Okay.
So you can imagine if there were no data caps, then there would be a lot more file sharing, right? And a lot more heavy file sharing, not just some light file sharing. And a lot of the techniques that are sort of light touch techniques would be failing to stop the copyright, right? So what you'd have is Hollywood lobbyists going to Congress, and they would say, please require ISPs to do something about these copyright violations. ISPs are the only ones that can do anything about this copyright violation. And you'd get a lot more filtering and a lot more government control over content on the internet. And so if not something exactly like SOPA, something equally bad or worse could happen if there were no data caps.
Right. Well, these issues are often associated with net neutrality, but is this association accurate in your opinion?
I don't think so. I think that there are good reasons why they might want to do this, even if they want to have a neutral internet, right? So somebody has to pay for the pipes, and the most efficient way to have people pay for the pipes is to pay a share of the fixed cost and then a share of the of the marginal cost. So a share of the cost of building the entire network, and then a share of the cost of each little bit. And so these pricing schemes are ways of approximating that. No one's gonna have a perfect pricing plan, but it makes sense as a way to approximate sort of an ideal pricing scheme.
And in a recent interview that we did with Larry Downs of Tech Freedom, he essentially indicated that net neutrality is often just mislabeled with whatever concerns arise about competition. Do you agree with his stance on this?
Yeah, that sounds right to me. Everybody wants a neutral internet, right? But it's totally different when you get into the actual economics of network industries, of building out this infrastructure. It's not always easy to provide neutrality. So you kind of want to have sort of as neutral as possible of a platform, and the market's going to determine that. It's not going to be, ideally you would not have a government regulator coming in and saying, we need to have, this is the definition of neutrality, and everyone needs to comply with it.
Interesting. Well, do you have any general statistics for how many people actually exceed the caps?
I don't know how many people actually exceed. If you're a normal internet user, and you browse the web and use email and watch some YouTube videos here and there, you're not going to get anywhere near the cap. The cap can, it really starts to bite if you do a lot of high quality video, high HD video online. And so I think if you get to about 100 hours a month of high definition surround sound video, then you would get close to the data cap.
Well, Free Press, Public Knowledge, and several other public interest groups argue that when ISPs put data caps in place, it discourages consumers from using high bandwidth apps online, which in turn keeps consumers locked in with ISPs. Well, what's your response to these claims?
Well, you have to compare it to the alternative, right? So the alternative, if the alternative is metering, then consumers might be discouraged also. So consumers might be discouraged from using Netflix-style application if they have to think about how much this is costing them in terms of additional bandwidth as well. So that's one response. And the other response is that I myself am a subscriber to 3 paid video services online, and I watch plenty of online video, and I've never hit the cap. I'm not too worried about it. The other interesting issue here is that I've never heard of anybody actually being disconnected by their ISP for legitimate use. I think you just get a letter that says, hey, you're using a lot, and please don't use as much, or we'll send you another letter. And it's kind of an idle threat.
Okay. Well, companies, as you said, such as Amazon and Netflix have spoken out against data caps, saying that their video streaming services are harmed as a result. And Sony also reportedly is stalling its streaming service out of these very concerns. So do the caps pose a threat to these types of services then?
They could in the short run, but in the long run, I think online video is here to stay, right? Online video is popular, it's convenient. If enough consumers just say, we're going to use this and we're going to go to our cap or even exceed it, I think that the internet service providers will have to accommodate them. And I don't know what that means. That could mean raising the cap. It could mean adding a new tier of service. It could mean, metering above the cap once you hit the cap. But I think that consumers are going to get their way on this issue.
In a paper on data caps, Public Knowledge also references mental accounting costs that result in consumers wanting flat rates. Can you explain this in further detail for us, as well as your thoughts on it?
Sure. Mental accounting costs are the little thinking that you do to account for the extra cost on your bandwidth bill, on your cable bill, from downloading an additional file. So you download an additional file, and if you're under a metering plan, you have to think about, well, this is a 10 megabyte file, and I'm being billed at whatever rate, and how many cents or how many fractions of a cent is this download costing me? And consumers don't like to do this at all. They're willing to pay more and to have a flat rate than to pay less and have a metered rate. So I think public knowledge said that services tend to evolve away from metering, and I think that they're right that they are evolving away from metering, and this bandwidth cap is one way to do that.
All right, well, switching gears just slightly, what about mobile data caps? Are they justifiable?
I think they are. I think that it's actually more important on mobile networks because there's much more congestion. In the mobile space, you tend to have more metering on top of, you have tiers of service, and then above a certain tier, you get metered, basically, $10 a gigabyte or something like that. And I think that's been pretty effective. But I think the days of unlimited data plans on the mobile space are they're a long ways away from coming back.
Right.
We're going to have metering for a long time.
The public interest groups and companies such as Amazon have called on Congress and the FCC to investigate their concerns. So where is this process, and do you foresee anything coming of it?
There's no investigation open right now, to my knowledge. I don't think that there will be any investigations. I'd be surprised. But some of these groups are very effective, so we'll keep our eyes open and see what happens.
All right. Well, we'll definitely follow this closely. Thank you so much for talking with us, Eli, and sharing your perspective.
My pleasure.
Okay, with this WebProNews report, I'm Abby Johnson.